Sega.
Commander, we have located a substantial Eldar strike force. This force
Our scanners place the warp spider in the position marked on your map.
He will not stay there for long. We should move.
Agreed, but watch for traps.
Assault squad is ready to deploy. Give the word.
Devastator Marines ready
Say
for
it, be
combat.
vigilant. Assault squad on the way. It is done. Move on. Excellent, Space Marines. We need only a word. Silent movement. Foot soldiers, trying to get a precise count. It is my honor.
Our weapons are ready. Repositioning.
Thaddeus reporting in. We are the coming out of stealth. Relocating.
Weapons ready. Repositioning.
Chapter, be vigilant. This is Thaddeus.
My time on this path is ending.
Danger has found us! Circumvent these ruins and our weapons.
Devastator Marines ready for combat. Brothers, we go. Our weapons are ready. Brothers, we go.
Say it, be vigilant.
Target acknowledged.
Redeploy! To cover.
Weapons ready. Brothers, we go.
This way. Reposition. Mark. Feel the might of the righteous. Engage jumpers. It is done. Move on.
Devastator
The
Marines.
chapter's recruit Thaddeus reporting to the fight, brothers. Relocate.
Just past these ruins.
It is done. Move on. Seek and destroy. By his will. We will thin their ranks. Repositioning. Be vigilant. Vigilant. Collisions. Try to flank them! It is done! Fire! Redeploy!
Massive day for unemployed GTA 6 fans. Moist Critical, better known as Charlie, the literal god of normies, and any opinion that goes straight down the middle and is incapable of neither offending anyone or actually creating discussion or meaning. Legend has it, if someone says something that just sounds like sound and useless words, Charlie has once said it. But I'm just joking with you. Moist Critical, friend of the channel, great guy obviously, I love him very much. We talk pretty much every day. He calls me up, we discuss what's happening, and I give him a tip here or there. But this time, needless to say, he did not call me up and to discuss the GTA 6 take that he was going to be making. And a lot of people are a little bit upset about what he said. Because let's be real, it doesn't exactly sound great when your opinion is you should be happy that they give you this opportunity to overpay this much for the game. And you should be happy that in the future everything's going to be more expensive. Yeah, that does not really sound great. Charlie did call me up personally and apologize because he knew I'm going to be slightly offended by this take. And I said, I am a forgiving man. I will probably at some point have the strength to forgive you. I'm a nice person. And, you know, maybe it's going to be equal as time passes. Maybe we will have the power to forgive Charlie.
The official GTA 6 pricing has finally been revealed. This has been a subject of more speculation than the fate of DB Cooper. For a long time, there was a lot of people spouting a bunch of hoopla about how it's going to be $100 or more for just the base standard edition of the game. And now we can put all of that drivel to rest because we now know the official...
XQC literally said that it needs to be $100, otherwise it would not be a success. Yes, surely. Because, you know, if Silk Sock wasn't $30 but $100, it would have been so much more successful. Now, this is just
price, and guess what? This is a historic piece. Not necessarily because of the price, because of what it represents. One of the few times I got a prediction right. This is a more important moment in the history of this planet than the Wright brothers' first flight. I got this correct. I said from the very beginning, Bob Humbug slapping down the Shadow Realm and Ocean $100. I always maintained that GTA 6 would be either $70 or $80. Then Nintendo blew the path wide open.
it's $90 though.
My price tag, I figured that would be the highest that they would go. And they did. It is confirmed to be $80. Now there is a one.
What do you mean confirmed $80? It's $89 off $99. It's one cent until $90. I don't even call that $80. I call it $90 because that's what it is.
$100 Ultimate Edition, which I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty on that in a moment. But can we please just take a moment and just bask in this very rare occurrence here of one of my predictions actually being right on the money, right on the nose. Alright, now that we've all blown our load and orgasmed over that fact, let's take a look. So, it is an $80 single-player experience or just the normal base GTA 6 game. Ultimate Edition is $100, and there is no physical copy of GTA 6. If you get a physical copy, you're getting a box. So
at some point there's going to be a physical copy just to know if people even bought them.
Digital only, which I know is nothing new, but I'm old enough to remember back in the day here, when my grandpappy was still proudly hiking 15 miles uphill in the rain and snow with nothing but preludes and a dream to make it to his local EB Games to get Halo CE on the Xbox. There came this idea that...
Bro, my grandfather had to go 20 miles uphill to get to the local gaming store, and then 20 miles uphill again to get back home.
What if you could download the games at home? And initially, when digital games started to take on, the big selling point was the convenience and also the price, because downloading the games just digitally getting them was cheaper than physically getting them, because the idea was they no longer had to spend a ton of time and resources developing the physical media for it. So it reflected in the price, where you paid less for the digital version. And it made sense because they're saving money by not manufacturing the discs anymore. That is completely gone in the current climate of the gaming industry.
Yep, and magically how nothing's less expensive. It's crazy how that never happens.
No one ever really brings it up anymore. Again, if it was a very real thing that happened, the digital versions are cheaper than if you got the physical counterpart. Now, no physical counterpart exists, digital only, and now the highest possible price tag that you can get away with doing. But again, it's no surprise because it's GTA 6. It's going to be the biggest game ever. It was always going to be successful no matter the price point. They're going to charge $200 for a pitch here, and everyone would have still been finding ways to conjure up enough clams to get it. Scrapping together shit from under their mattress, robbing the local children's lemonade stand, whatever it would have.
Let's be real, most of the time it's going to be burglary.
Taken, people would have found a way, and it still would have been the biggest game ever. Like, that's just the brass tacks of it. So, it being $80, there being no physical, is a little disappointing to me, because I've been getting back into physical media, and I just do miss the time that digital versions were cheaper than the physical versions. Like, that was a big thing there for a little while, and now it's just a relic of the past, completely forgotten about. But now let's talk about the Ultimate Edition, because this is quite contentious, and for good reason. There is a laundry list of things that appear to be locked behind the Ultimate Edition. Now, I don't know if that means they are permanently paywalled, like you will never be able to
permanently paywalled.
Access these things, which is definitely how it seems here, because looking at this clothing store, for example, it does say only open for business with the Ultimate Edition. Same with the Electric Fang Tattoo, the Salon, Ride Out Customs.
So everyone knows what this is going to be. This is a lot worse than most people are thinking, a lot worse than most people are saying, because if they're doing this, that means that they are obviously willing to cut up content, which means there's probably going to be a decent chunk here, and that means that they are going to find ways to get you to buy this. And first of all, this cut content is probably easily going to be the best looking content. It's going to be the best sprays, it's going to be the best tattoos, it's going to be the best clothing, it's going to be literally the best everything. If you actually care about customizing your character, chances are pretty high that exactly this is going to be unanimously the best. And chances are it's not going to be the best because it's simply that amazing. It's going to be the best because everything else in the game is quite generic. So this is the reason why people should honestly be mad about things like this. Because when you're trying to gate content through a paywall, that content needs to be special. People are not that cheap. People are not that stupid to just buy the $100 edition because, reasons. No. People are not going to do that. $20 is a lot. That's a bump in the night, you know? In any case, they're gonna find ways. It's gonna be the best looking stuff, and I think they're gonna even probably do it to such an egregious degree that it's gonna be like visible on your map, like red dots that literally say you can't be there. You know, when you get near it, it shows you that there's a shop and it's closed and you can't enter. It's gonna be annoying. They're gonna find ways to push people to buy this. Maybe.
In 1983, two American computer scientists published a book that frightened Washington. Edward Feigenbaum, a founder of the field of expert systems at Stanford, and the writer Pamela McCorduck, titled it The Fifth Generation.
Eldar, be alert.
And the subtitle named the stakes without reach Japan's computer challenge to the world. 1 year earlier, in 1982, the Trade Ministry of Tokyo had opened a research institute called ICA and a 10-year mission. Its director, Kazuhiro Fuji, pulled together roughly 100 of the country's best academics and pointed them in a single goal, which was to build a machine that reasoned in logic instead of arithmetic. To leave people behind. Policymakers in the United States believed that Pentagon answered with a program of its own, and Europe answered with 2 more. Almost everyone expected the same ending, that the nation which had already taken televisions, memory chips, and automobiles would take software next. 4 decades later, the reverse is what happened. The country that builds some of the finest hardware on Earth now runs almost entirely on programs written somewhere else. And the reason for that is not the reason most people do. You weren't through this era, so you remember the shape of it. The mainframe in your machine room might have carried a Fujitsu or a Hitachi nameplate, built to run the same workloads as an IBM System 370, often faster and for less money. Chips inside your terminals and your test gear came out of Japanese fabrication lines that were beating American memory makers on yield and on price, and the trade friction that produced filled the business pages for a decade. Your oscilloscope, your logic analyzer, your fax machine, every one of them reflected a manufacturing culture that treated a defect rate of 1 in 10,000 as a disgrace. And yet the operating system booting on your desk was American. The database holding your records was American. Spreadsheets, compilers, word processors, the network stack, nearly every layer you actually typed into came from a company in California, in Washington State, or in Massachusetts. Perhaps you visited a Japanese software operation in those years and walked out impressed. The discipline was genuine. Code reviews ran on a calendar, defect counts were logged by hand and studied. Reused libraries were cataloged and enforced across whole buildings full of programmers working in coordinated shifts. Floor layouts resembled an assembly area, with desks arranged by stage of the work, designed feeding, coding, feeding, test. People who toured those rooms in the 1980s went home and warned their managers that the Japanese had learned to manufacture software the way they manufactured cars, and that lone American programmers in a craft tradition would be overrun. The anxiety in American boardrooms was real, and trade negotiators flew to Tokyo to argue over chips and market access. You could feel the asymmetry inside your own room. The machines on the floor kept improving, while the value of any system kept shifting toward the programs that ran on it. Those programs provided. Consider where the money actually sat. Hardware had a price. Software was the line item a vendor waved away to help sell the machine, or a custom job your systems house controlled. Nobody in your purchasing department imagined a program as a product written once and sold a billion copies. And in Japan, that assumption remained that it did anywhere on Earth. For a stretch of the 1980s, the case for Japanese software supremacy. Michael Kusumano, MIT researcher fluent in Japanese, spent years inside these operations and published the definitive study in 1990, titling it A Challenge to American Culture. He documented enormous organized software factories at Hitachi, Toshiba, NEC, and Fujitsu, places where thousands of engineers built systems under standardized processes, shared tooling, and quality control followed straight from production floor. The numbers behind the factories were striking. As of 1986, by his accounting, about 94% of the software sold in Japan was wholly or partly custom built. Japanese firms had ridden compatible mainframes into real strength during the 1970s, selling machines that matched IBM workloads at a lower price, and they carried that confidence into programming. The government layered ambition on top. Under Fuji, the 5th generation effort was projected to cost hundreds of millions of dollars across its decade. And by the time it closed in 1992, it had spent roughly 54 billion yen on custom processors and an operating system written in a logic language descended from
stirring up the orcs. Typhon
Engineers
is far
there
more secure.
built 5 parallel inference machines, one of them wiring together 512 processors, hardware genuinely
Not all
ahead
news
of
is
its
good,
moment.
however.
The West
We are
took the
receiving
threat
numerous
seriously
reports
enough
of
to
local
reply in
vegetation
kind.
mutating and attacks by
America
hordes of
launched a
leaping
strategic
alien
computing
creatures.
program at the
These
Pentagon,
creatures,
funded
what
near
do they
$1
look
billion
like?
over a
Most
decade.
of the
Europe
reports
started
are
its
from
own
citizens,
large
Cyrus,
research
and
effort,
their fear
and
makes
Britain
for
ran a
unreliable
parallel
descriptions.
national push.
I need you to return
Measured
to
by
Calderas
total
as soon as
software
possible.
revenue, Japan would
Bad Zappa's
become
orcs
and
have
remain
gathered for another
second
major
only to the
strike
United
against the
States,
planetary
and
capital.
this in the world's
Without your
third
support,
largest economy.
I fear Calderas
Its embedded
will fall.
software earned a global reputation for low defect rates in machine tools, in robots, and in engine controllers. Independent surveys of the period even ranked Japanese projects above American ones on defects shipped and on raw coding output. Kusumano would later call the result the puzzle of Japanese software, strong process bolted to weak products. Every signal a careful observer could read in 1990 pointed the same direction. The factories larger and more disciplined than anything in California. The engineering talent deep, the capital patient. The forecast of dominance was not foolish. It followed from the evidence that everyone could see. Look closely at how money moved through this industry because the structure is visible in the cash flows. A Japanese company that wanted a system did not shop for a packaged product on a shelf. It called its long-standing vendor, usually a large electronics maker or a system integrator bound to it through the keiretsu network of cross-held reciprocal supplier relationships. That integrator wrote a one-of-a-kind system to fit the client's exact internal procedures, then billed for the engineers assigned to it. Below the prime contractor sat a pyramid of subcontractors, each tier cheaper than the one above, each writing a slice of code to order. The arrangement leaned hard on a customer's king habit, where the integrator built what the client asked for rather than challenging a weak request, because doing so still produced a billable contract. Corporate buyers stayed thin on in-house technology staff, so they often could not say clearly what they needed, and as late as 2008, only 30 to 40% of large Japanese firms even employed a full-time chief information officer. The economics of all this show up in figures that barely moved across decades. In 2012, custom development still accounted for roughly 86% of Japanese software sales, while genuine software products made up only 14%, and system integrators captured about 64% of that custom work. Within that small product slice, video games alone made up a large share, which meant the horizontal business software that scales across thousands of buyers was smaller still. The talent followed the money into the same channel. Around 75% of Japan's technical software workforce sat inside these service firms and their subcontracting tiers, against 29% in the United States. Spending told the same story. In 2007, Japanese private firms invested about 1% of revenue in information technology, while American firms in 2008 invested more than 4%. Companies bought a system once and kept it running for an average of 17 years by the Trade Ministry's own measure. And by 2010, as much as 80% of the Japanese technology budget went to maintaining what already existed. Money entered software through a single door, the bespoke contract, and almost none of it flowed toward building something to sell many times over. The usual explanation for all of this is cultural and linguistic, and it is the part of the story that needs the most pushback. People say Japanese engineers struggled with English, the working language of global software and open source collaboration. They point to weak university computer science, to a shortage of risk-taking, to a national temperament that prizes consensus over the lone inventor. Each of those claims holds a grain of truth. English proficiency was low, and Japanese universities did graduate far fewer computer science majors than American ones, around 16,000 against 63,000 in 2009. The trouble is that these explanations describe symptoms and then call them causes. A deeper reason Japan stayed weak in software is structural, and it can be stated in one sentence. Software in Japan was never allowed to become a product. Every institution surrounding it pushed in the opposite direction. The keiretsu contract rewarded a vendor for customizing a system for one client, not for generalizing it for thousands. Its subcontracting pyramid rewarded delivery on cost, schedule, and defect count, which are the right targets for building hardware and the wrong targets for inventing a product. Lifetime employment and promotion by seniority placed software engineers near the bottom of a hierarchy ruled by mechanical and electrical. Even in products by a 2010 government survey, software had already grown to 61% of development cost. Howard Stringer, running Sony, said plainly in 2006 that his hardware engineers began a product and the software people were brought in afterward because the older men sat at the top and the younger programmers pushed up from below. The same imprint slowed individual firms. Vico shipped its first digital multifunction in 1987, thinking the code was trivial. and only around 2001 did it finally build a model in which software design built the whole product architecture, a learning process that the inner part of the company happened. National ideology reinforced the pattern. The cult of Monozukuri, the celebrated Japanese spirit of making physical things became formal policy through a 1999 law, and a government manufacturing white paper of more than 300 pages. 2012 spared only 4 for software. With no independent packaged software sector and almost no startups, nobody inside the system carried the idea that built Silicon Valley, which is that a program costs almost nothing to copy, therefore rewards scale, network effects, and reuse across a whole market. The contrast surfaces in the national accounts. Between 2000 and 2006, software added about 8% to total productivity, with growth in the United States and roughly 1% in Japan. Back in 1980, 1% of Japanese venture money went to software startups, against 11%. The composition of spending matched the output. Around the year 2000, packaged software drew only about 10% of Japanese software investment, against close to 30% in the United States. Firms split their money more evenly between buying products, paying others to build, and waiting for their own use. Two scholars who spent years inside the industry reduced the whole trap to one line: that there were not enough Japanese products focused on software and not enough Japanese professionals focused on product. So demand for first-rate software architects never built. The factory the West admired was real, and it was tuned beautifully for exactly the wrong thing. Japan began to feel the cost from the late 1980s through the 2000s, and the turning points were concrete. The personal computer arrived, and the market consolidated fast with a few standard architectures and a few standard operating systems. Japanese and Hiramatsu, who excelled at custom-made firmware, were unprepared for a product so missing. There were warning signs even earlier, including a 1982 study in which the FBI caught Japanese electronics engineers trained for stolen IP design secrets, a sign of how much the strategy still rested on following rather than defending. The fifth-generation program closed in 1992. Project programming and special electronics, just as cheap commodity and microprocessors, CMOS, and Unix swept the field. And then, the internet rewarded the open standards the project had passed over. Machines from G's Fuji team were technically respectable and commercially still good, and several now sit behind glass Through the 1980s, large Japanese firms cut costs by spinning their information technology departments off into subsidiaries, which then had an in-house ability to recognize a strong piece of software. The motive was cost rather than strategy, since these firms still looked globally competitive and did not yet treat software as central to their future. Their enterprise software habits compounded the good, since the few firms that adopted modern packages installed only a modularity and bent them to fit old procedures instead of changing how they worked. The damage showed that by 2008, services made up only about 2% of Japan's information and communication technology investments. The services were becoming a larger share of the The gap persisted until the present day. In 2023, Japan imported roughly $23.5 billion in digital services, while exporting about $11.5 billion, a shortfall that widened as the world moved to cloud platforms and software subscriptions owned overseas. Then the smartphone finished a parallel job on the consumer side, folding the camera, the game machine, and the music player into one device whose value was the software. Japanese champions of each separate gadget watched their profits. By the end of 2011, the combined stock market value of Japan's electronics makers had fallen by more than half from its level a decade ago. What survived was the failure was specific. Embedded software remained the Japanese code running engine and industrial mode, or a precision machine from a Japanese maker, still focused worldwide. Games became one place where Japan built software as a product, one globally, accounting for about 30% even systems written to build it. That single pattern proved the engineers who were at the moment the work was brilliant. Fifth generation academic skill, parallel logic building. Even though no business grew out of it. Those big system integrators the structure created, firms like Fujitsu, NEC, Hitachi, and NTT Data, are still among the largest software employers on the planet. Though their hold on locked-in corporate clients has begun to loosen as cloud subscriptions let Japanese companies finally buy products instead of commissioning custom builds. A younger generation of Japanese firms now builds software products and sells them by subscription, which lets domestic companies step past the bespoke systems that held them for so long. One useful comparison sits just across the sea, where Samsung, starting from much the same hardware culture, deliberately bought foreign software firms and hired English-speaking engineers to break the old hierarchy. While Hitachi has lately rebuilt part of itself around a data services business rather than pure machinery, the contrast is instructive rather than comforting, since it shows that the obstacle was never raw ability, but the set of incentives that decided where ability is seen. Engineers who staffed the software factories were never short on skill, and that was always the plan. They were placed by every incentive around in rooms where the job was to fit code to one customer, rather than to imagine a product for everyone. You can still find their inheritance if you know where to look, in the quiet firmware of a Japanese car that simply works, and in a game console under a television that runs without complaint for a decade. Walk into that Tokyo's, and you can stand in front of a parallel inference machine that was built to make American software obsolete, now silent behind the painted glass. The lesson it carries is not that Japan lacked engineers, because it never did. If you remember the software, with its disciplined rows of programmers building one system at a time for one client, you are looking at the most capable software workforce of its era, aimed by its own institutions at the wrong machine. Subscribe to the next one.
Keep fighting! We are pushing them back! We will kill every last one of them!
It's done. Move on.
Meteorite inbound on your position.
Not a meteorite, Martellus. That is a Tyranid spore. Tyranid warrior! Kill the large warrior beast! It is directing the others!
It's done. Move on.
Captain Thule! Get to Captain Thule! Keep the beast at range! The warrior beast is getting away!
Captain Thule, get to Captain Thule.
We have Captain Thule!
Thunderhawk 1, emergency extraction at relay coordinates. Thunderhawks 3 and 4, follow with bombing run, purification spread. There's the alien. May the Emperor be with us all.
Let our enemies beware, for victory is ours. We face our darkest hour. Captain Thule has fallen to aliens who have escaped retribution. A massive hive fleet looms over our recruiting worlds. But this battle is not over.
Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Millennial Smark, and I'm bringing you the slop, the whole slop, and nothing but the slop. Boys, it's the feud, it's the war, it's the rivalry. that will never end. CM Punk versus AEW it just won't end. It's been 4 years. 4 years since this rivalry has begun. And it's been 3 years since CM Punk has left. I mean, by all rights, keep going with this, right? I've been nearly milking this entire saga for 4 years now. I've been milking this saga between 2 accounts. I will continue to milk this saga if you keep putting out the content that allows me to milk this saga. Now, I understand where Punk is coming from. I know why he did it. I find it hypocritical that he talks shit about Hulk Hogan, but he likes to greatly exaggerate situations that absolutely did not fucking happen to the degree as to how he wants to play it up. But CM Punk went on a interview, right? And he decided to just blatantly fucking lie on Chris Jericho's name. Now, we'll get into a little bit of the history between Chris Jericho and CM Punk and my reasoning personally as to why I believe Punk just blatantly fucking lied about him. But I think it's best to set the pace and, you know, set up the context for you guys. So I'll let Punk speak for himself. This is what got all of this started. Check it out.
You mentioned Brazil. The company went and did a show in Brazil one time. We haven't been back. Brazil, I love you. I would like to come back. Let's try to work on that. My opponent that night rolled out of the ring and snatched a Brazilian flag from somebody. You know where this is going.
I know exactly where this is going.
Brazil don't play.
No, not like that.
In America, you get people who get bent out of shape.
Right.
But there's no law against it. People burning flags, doing whatever. Right? Freedom of speech. He rolled in the ring. I'm down, looking at him going, maybe no. And I can't remember exactly if he just threw it down and stepped on it, or if he maybe like wiped his butt with it. Shawn Michaels did this to the Canadian flag too, very famously.
Man, I'm Canadian too. I feel that one.
And it was palpable, but still a little bit different than doing it in Brazil. The instant this happened, all of a sudden there's a second referee in the ring, and I'm going, oh, what's going on? One referee's talking to him. The other referee's talking to me, trying to relay the information. Then our head of talent relations is in the ring. This all happens lickety-split.
Fast.
I'm looking around like, okay. And then I turn and I look, and the ring is surrounded by men in fatigues, and one has his gun pointed directly at me.
Oh my goodness, man.
And they tell me,
you're not even a threat, though.
No, but, you know, they were offended, you know, and they said, you know, I had my extra referee and my head of talent relations, like, this match is over. Like, we got to wrap this up. You know, homeboy who did the thing was like, absolutely not. I refuse to do this. So I had to roll him up for real, stack him up. And the rest of 3. I grabbed the crowd pops. I grabbed the flag
to defend the
jump
target,
up on the
Commander.
turnbuckle. I'm showing it.
They hope to
kissing
cover
the flag.
his escape, no doubt.
Hey, everybody, sorry, I love you. And then I got out of there, and then they tried to snatch dude up, grab his passport. He knew if he handed his passport over, he wasn't getting it back. He wasn't coming home. No. So we by the cover of
The
night,
enemy infests a shrine to
got
the
him
Emperor.
out of there, and then we continued on the tour. He went home.
So you hear that story, you think to yourself, wow, what a locker room leader that CM Punk died. Holy shit. Chris Jericho there, he did something akin to Shawn Michaels fucking the flag in the middle of the ring. You know, like he disrespected the Brazilian flag and all these guys, teams, they came out and they started to point guns at CM Punk. That's just Chris Jericho and CM Punk. Even though they noticed that Jericho was fucking the flag just like Shawn Michaels, as he compared to in the middle of the ring, he disrespected in the same manner. They're pointing the guns at poor old CM Punk. Not even the referee, just CM Punk and Chris Jericho. Even though CM Punk did not participate in anything that Jericho did, just like the referee, who also didn't get a gun pointed at him, at least Punk did not reference that point. No. And then Punk got the flag, got on top, kissed it. Everybody, we love Brazil, left the ring. And he was the savior of the day. Punk saved us from government tyranny, folks. He is. Go real. Go real shit. No, I love you. I got over your politics. I love you. But your bullshit. If there was any tissue around, I would love for you to have the buckshot lariat. I just find that hilarious because, like, you know, when he did it in AEW, he kept falling on his ass, but he just perfectly did it on this show right here. Devontae, it's an old man. No, Devontae, shut up, bitch. I know. I'm just saying this. God damn, get the fucking pennies out of your asshole. But no, here, check this out real quick. This is Chris Jericho's side of the story.
And somebody throws a Brazilian flag into the ring. So Punk grabs it and kind of takes it and parades it around, waves the flag, people cheer, and he puts it on the turnbuckle. Referee Mike Chioda goes to take the flag out of the ring, and I stop and go, no, Mikey, come here, let me have that flag. I pick the flag up, I wave it in the air, I drop it on the ground, I step on it, and kick it. Took about 3 seconds. And I was expecting to elicit this crazy riot from the fans in attendance. Didn't really do that. Got a little bit of a reaction. It was nothing special. Nothing over the top. So I figured, well, that's going to be. So I start working the match. And Punk had just finished his shine. And I just started to sell for me. And I'm in the corner looking around. And I see and I turn to the referee. It's not Chioda, it's Charles Robinson. Charles is coming to the ring. What's going on? Why is Charles in this? Is he hurt? He goes, you have to apologize. What? He goes, you have to apologize for kicking the flag. I'm like, F that, get out of here. He goes, I'm serious. I'm like, get out of here, go away. And I look and I see John Laurinaitis running down to the ring. And he's the producer of the match, the agent of the show. And he goes, seriously, you have to apologize. Seriously, so it's almost like big part of the corner. And Seek and Destroy. I go and say, hey, listen, I just want to say, I apologize to everybody attending tonight for kicking this flag. I did not do it maliciously. I did it as part of the show. I did it to entertain you. I would never do something to insult or disrespect the fine people of Brazil. We love your country. We love your flag. And I hope you can forgive me. And I hope you enjoy the show. And the people are kind of lightly clapping, but I almost got the sense they're like, what is this guy talking about? Like, just, can we have a wrestling match, please? Can you get back to the show? So I go back in the corner, and it's like, game on! And, you know, we have to start from scratch, build the match back up again, and we did. It was nothing special, though the vibe had been lost. Punk beats me, and then grabs the flag and runs around with it, you know, and that's what we wanted to do. Good guy grabs flag, puts it over, bad guy insults it, good guy wins in the end, grabs flag and runs around, and everybody's happy, you know, the new son of Brazil. So I walk back through the curtain, and I go, and it's one of those things where no one's really looking at me. Everyone's kind of looking at the ground and looking the other way. And I see a couple of these soldiers on the other side, and there's one gray-haired guy who's just staring me down, like just really bad. So I go over to Dean Malenko, who was another of the producers on the show, and I'm like, what's going on, man? And he said, that guy over there, he's a colonel in the Brazilian army, and he thinks wrestling is real. He wanted to walk to the ring and arrest you on the spot when you kick the flag. Like, screw the match, just wanted to come in and arrest you. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, so I would have been taken directly to a Brazilian jail wearing like brief underwear with sparkles on it, you know, like small little tights with sparkles and rhinestones. Like, can you imagine being in the jail in the jungle with that? Like instant ladyboy, right? So I'm like, well, thankfully they didn't. He said, yeah, we were able to talk him into just accepting an apology, but he hasn't accepted it. He's very mad at you, and you know, he still wants to arrest you. You know, we probably should get out of here sooner than later.
Now, it's not that big of a deal. You know, like I said, he told a bit of a fib. And, you know, maybe it could be the fact that Jericho is in the ring. So maybe he can't hear it from the perspective of, like, the audience. That could be the case. Maybe it could just be the audio quality from the cell phone, where if you watch the actual match that's linked down in the description box below, it's not a match again, it's just the beginning of the match. Like, acoustics coming from the phone might be a little bit, I don't know, higher than what Jericho is hearing. But from what I can tell, from the crowd's perspective, when Jericho goes to that floor, like, or at least that's what they want to be in the video, they tuned the absolute fuck out of Jericho. They did not like that shit at all. So like for Jericho to like kind of downplay it a little bit and say like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal, you know, like I don't believe the crowd was really that rowdy, you know, I was trying to incite a riot and nothing really came out of it. No. Now, again, also because I mean, I don't know when Jericho actually talked about any of this, but you know, I'm gonna presume, just throwing it out there, this had to been at least maybe close to a decade prior, maybe prior, when Jericho actually talked about it. So I don't know, like he could just be misremembering, but I only bring that up, the misremembering part, only because it's like, okay, we'll give. It's always the question that if Jericho can't even remember him doing a spot like that, you know, could it be possible that Punk didn't make up anything? Possible. But Jericho, outside of that, remembered everything else Punk brought up towards the end, as far as Punk being looked at in the favorable light, picking up the Brazilian flag, holding it up and kissing it. So, you know, again, we're just here to point out both sides to at least give a little bit more credit. But essentially, how Jericho came out of what Punk never is that Jericho, after he was told to apologize, he blew, you know, the referees off a couple times before his flag came out and told the day of serious deal to apologize. And then Jericho took the Brazilian flag. Hey guys, this is all fake. This is all scripted. I love Brazil. I only did that because I'm a bad guy. I'm a heel. That's my job, is to get you guys to hate me. And, you know, all that shit, right? And then, like, he goes backstage, and that's where he meets the military people that Punk claims was pointing guns at him and Jericho in the ring to make himself look good. But, you know, in reality, it didn't happen in the ring. It happened backstage, and it wasn't really the pointing of a gun. It was more so the military guys coming to look for Jericho because they're fucking retarded and they can't tell that wrestling is fake. All that jazz, right? And it sounds like they were both kind of confirming that Jericho got the fuck off that tour as quickly as humanly possible. And I did hear reports at the time that Jericho did get suspended for like a month. I'm not gonna lie, I do remember reading that back in 2012. So there does direction. It's just the way that Punk just completely buries Jericho. It suggests like more or less like he was the guy leading everything. Jericho was a dumbass. He went into business for himself and did something that he shouldn't have done, and he had to bail him out. That's how he's framing it, and it's like, no, that's not how it went down, Punk. At least not to the exact point as to how you're. And it brings up the question of why the right? It's not like you just can't look this shit up. I mean, I could pretty fucking easily look all this up, right? And more importantly, why would you blame me? Again, you look at it up. I don't know why you did that. And it starts, right? Now, I'm gonna go back in the past. I'm gonna go both, right? I still have my arguments, my recent photos. I still have everything shaved from my previous video here. You know, everything that was shaved there. Just because the pages like this have to go into articles. I found this article about that to my old account. And this is crazy. This is why it's I found this article. This is 4 years ago. Michael Select was told as well as Scrum. Jericho told CM Punk that he was an answer to the locker room and a detriment to the company. Those we've spoken to didn't recount CM Punk's reply verbatim, but said that he effectively told Jericho it wasn't his business and he needed to leave. We've also heard there were more interactions that haven't been reported yet that we're working on gaining more detail. Shortly after, Jericho stepped up to appear at the scrum. They also held leading time I think that was the so I did a video of your order. We had to get backstage around the time with Moxley but I didn't continue. And was signed to a significant extension that some of Moxley spent Michael reached out to Chris Jericho and the story with the idea that some players did return to the match to close. And I guess the person who was article meant I'll reiterate wrestling, especially Chris Jericho the story. Now, that's just one, right? There's another
The Eldar know the Tyranids
essentially
are coming.
going after Chris
That
Jericho.
explains
Again, I made
their
a video
actions
on
among
this.
the orcs.
Keep all my
What do
things
the
safe for
Tyranids
this
have to do
exact
with
reason.
Eldar helping orcs?
Completely organized,
Full-fledged
organized
orc
person.
uprising could
Organized
actually
person.
slow the
In the
Tyranids,
web,
Thaddeus.
I'm the best.
If the
No one can
Eldar
tell
were
me
not doing
anything
this on our
differently.
own recruiting
This
worlds,
came
we
from
could use the
CM
situation
Punk's
to our
old
advantage.
Instagram. Again, I remember talking about this at the time. This is Punk now.
Why would
Side.
we waste our time?
I wasn't cleared to come back to wrestle
Space
yet. Mind you,
Marines.
this is him. I think
We
he's injured at the time.
fear
I think I did this
nothing
video in
because
2023 because I got it in the
incarnate.
2023 folder.
We
So this
may
must
be
have been
fear
before
incarnate,
Collision was
Abatus,
even a thing.
but we face an
I
enemy
wasn't
that
cleared
knows
to
no
come back to
fear.
wrestle yet.
We will
Then
need every
plan
advantage we can get
I
if we
think
want to
then
save the
plan
sector.
was to wrestle. I think he meant the plan was to wrestle at the pay-per-view. I sat and listened to Moxley's Rocky 3 idea. I explained how I'd never seen a Rocky movie. I thought the idea sucked, but if the boss wanted to do it, whatever. He said he wouldn't
So
lose
the
to me.
Eldar were
I
uniting
never
the orcs to slow
explained,
down
or
the
I've never
Tyranids.
experienced,
Yes,
someone
the
refusing to
Marion
lose to
clearly
me.
knew of the
I just
Tyranids.
laughed. I
This
asked
explains
Tony if
much
this was
when
what
we have
he
been
wanted.
getting reports
He
of
said yes. He's the boss, so I said okay, but I need to be cleared first. They kept saying it could just be a squash, so I didn't need to be cleared. I scoffed at that. My health is more important. Dave Meltzer is a liar, Jericho is a liar and a stooge. There were plans, but plans always change, but I'll never put a company above my health ever again. Now, according to the photos that I have this saved under Moxley goes after Punk, Punk goes after Moxley. Again, these are videos I made years ago, so I can't remember the context, but if I can remember the video in itself that I made at the time,
The
I
Tyranids
think
are
this was the
unlike
video
any
that I
other
made
threat we have faced,
where
Tarkus.
Punk and
Orcs
Moxley
may
went
operate
back
in
and
vast
forth
hordes, but
with
they
each
still
other.
have
Well, not even
individual
Moxley, I think it was
chieftains that
just
unite
Punk,
them.
and he buried
Kill
them.
these chieftains,
And there was
and
more
the
stuff
orc
that I
horde
said,
is
but I
weakened and
cannot remember
scattered.
verbatim. Again, this is
A
almost 4 years
Tyranid
ago.
hive fleet, however,
But I only
is
include
a
this
single
because
massive
that
organism.
portion in the bottom
Every
where it says
creature in the
Jericho
swarm
is
is
a liar
simply one
and a
part of a
stooge,
single
this is
terrifying
alluding to a
mind.
point that
We
Punk kept
cannot
bringing
break
up
the Tyranids'
also
morale
throughout his
or take
tenure
advantage of their
after the
pride.
whole Brawl Out stuff,
We cannot
where
make
he was
them
calling
see
Jericho
reason.
a
And for
person who
every
kept
beast
running
we
back
kill,
and forth
a
to Dave
million
Meltzer
more are
leaking
ready to
information.
take its place.
He said it was him
But what
and it
do
was
they
the Young
want?
Bucks who were
The
both
hive
doing that,
devours
right?
entire
And he had a
worlds.
problem with
Its
that.
goal is
So
to feed itself
it's been
and
a
grow.
situation ever
And it
since
will
where
not stop
Punk
until
has
the entire
never liked
galaxy is
Jericho as
consumed.
far as the AEW
Commander,
stuff
the
is
orcs
considered.
continue to
And you
undermine our
know,
defenses on
they had a
Calderas.
little bit of
We need to shore
you
up
know,
these defenses
back
if we
and
are to
forth
have
stuff
any hope of
happening in
stopping the
WWE as
Tyranids.
well. Like I remember a story. I don't know if it was Edge or if it was Jericho telling this story, or maybe somebody else. I can't remember. But it was a story something along the lines of this had to have been like maybe 2010, maybe 2009, where like Jericho and Edge, I think, were like watching some hockey game or something like that, and Punk, because I think their match was coming up or something like that, he wanted to work on their match, or he wanted to do something alluding to the match, but it was like a simple tag team match or some shit like that, right? And Jericho and Edge was like, it's not that big of a deal. We work matches like this all the fucking time. We want to watch the hockey game. We'll get into the ring. We'll call it out on the fly type shit. And Punk was really, really pissed off about it because he's like, hey, we should be taking this serious. It's a match. Why are we like, you know, let's focus on the fucking match, guys. And Jericho and Edge was just blowing him off like, go fuck off, kid. Like, we're busy watching hockey right now. We're Canadians. Shut up. Okay, like, stop. Leave us alone. Let us be Canucks for a goddamn change. Goddamn. And it was always situations like that. Although I did hear like conflicting reports also that Jericho and Punk were cool with each other at one point. Like I know when Jericho had that fight with Hurricane Helms, Gregory Helms, and I don't know if both of them went to jail, but I think for a fact Jericho had to go in because I think Gregory punched him in the face or something like that, and Punk had to bail him out of jail or something like that, alluding to that. You can look that up yourself if you want to. So it does seem like they have a rocky relationship off and on, but as of right now, Punk is on the fuck Jericho train. He is absolutely on the fuck. He is absolutely on the fuck Jericho train ever since his run with AEW. And that's not the first time also. I made plenty of videos in the past of Jericho and Punk having interactions like this. But it's just crazy to me how Punk is in WWE. He's living his best life. And he's still on the fuck Chris Jericho
leading
train.
a swarm of
The fact that he would just blatantly make up a lie like that, just to bury Jericho and make him look like a complete Neanderthal to do something like that, when we could just blatantly fucking look it up, is out of this goddamn world crazy to me. But it seems like no matter what time frame we're in, I can be an old man with a cane, a fucking gray beard, going all the way to the floor. I will be sitting back in my rocking chair, microphone dead in my face like I'm LL Cool J in a Mama Said Knock You Out video, and I'm gonna be here detailing the feud behind the Bucks and Jericho and Omega and Punk. It's the feud that will never end, and I'm happy to be here to constantly report on it. Nice to know there's always an update though, am I right? But let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. Who do you side with when it comes to the story? Are you on CM Punk's side? In regards to, yeah, he obviously told a fib. Yeah, he's kind of a hypocrite for all the shit he talks about Hulk Hogan, and he kind of just did the same exact thing. But he did it for the right reasons. He did it because that stooge Chris Jericho is a punk ass, and he needs to be put in this place every time a situation brings him up. And if Punk wants to bury him every chance he gets, just like he buried him in AEW, then let him bury the son of a bitch. Or are you on Chris Jericho's
Target the
side,
larger
where it's
creatures
like,
to disrupt the swarm.
I mean, you're just an AEW
That will
fan,
buy us the
right?
time
I
to
don't
get to
really
our
have much say about
target.
that. Usually, you hate CM Punk,
will have his vengeance.
for whatever reason. You have your reasons. I'm not here to say you don't have your reasons. You side with Jericho because Jericho's an AEW. You love AEW. No, blatantly fucking biased. Don't be biased. It's always uses ice
To the fight, brothers. Here and let us go.
Our wrath anew. Brothers. Our assault squad is taking off. Another enemy crushed.
I am far from finished.
Engage the enemy. Devastator Marines ready for combat. Onward then. Orders.
Payday 2 is a very special game with a very special feel, and if you've played it at any point in the last 13 years, you probably know what I'm talking about. The anxiety dropping in my swarming focus while moving through the game restaurant, immediate time and cook-off is a peak gaming experience for me, and don't even get me started on the countless attempts I made at shooting Shadow by myself on the hardest difficulty just to alert all bar mall cops last second to have progress. The game came out in August of 2013, and as I'm recording this, nearly 13 years later, it's still pulling somewhere between 20 and 30,000 concurrent players on Steam on a normal day. What makes it genuinely bizarre, though, is Payday 3, the sequel built specifically to replace it, launched in 2023 and now struggles to hold a few hundred players at the same time. By any reasonable measure, Payday 2 should have been dead years ago. This is a game that openly betrayed its own community by adding paid loot boxes after swearing on the record that it never would. The people who actually created it walked out the door in 2015. Its parent studio nearly went bankrupt and got raided by economic crime authorities over suspected insider trading. And then it got a full sequel that was supposed to make it obsolete.
Take your position, brother.
Games don't survive any one of those things, but Payday 2 survived all of them, and it currently has more players than Subnautica 2. So how is a 13-year-old game still kicking? Why did players who waited a decade for Payday 3 take one look at it and run straight back to 2013? And why did the studio that spent a fortune trying to bury this game end up quietly crawling back to it? To find out, I went looking for answers, and I got them from some of the actual people who built this game, including the voice actors. What they tell me is stranger than expected, so let's start. The video story starts in 2011 with Payday the Heist, a small little operator that realizes that he will have to cooperative the whole thing is not the right time to go right now there's also a genuine the kind of game that sold well into the hundreds of thousands of copies in its first months and still holds a Steam rating more than 1,000 copies today. For a small studio's heist experience, that was without signal that people wanted more of this. But for all in all, it was thin. The heist shipped with only 6 playable heists, its criminal AI was rough enough that it wouldn't touch mission objectives and it left you to heal yourself, and the core loop started recycling on your appearance and powers. The same problem is the same I would walk right back into over a decade later, but I'm getting ahead of myself. For now, the take is simple. Players like the idea more than what can happen. If we want more heists, more variety, more progression, smarter teammates, matchmaking, and an option to actually pull these jobs off quietly instead of always going in loud. That combination, a proven concept with the to-do list the fans had already written, is exactly why the sequel showed up so fast. It's also why Payday the Heist hit such a small part of the story. The original was the rough draft. So, that rough draft in the sequel. Well, let's just say they weren't exactly a company specializing in heist games. Starbreeze was a Swedish studio that had spent the 2000s building new cinematic single-player games like The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, and The Darkness, and by 2012, it was struggling. Its big, EA-backed reboot of Syndicate had flopped commercially, a chunk of its talent had walked out the door, and the studio had piled up millions in losses over its history. It needed a hit. So in April of 2012, Starbreeze acquired Overkill, and in a wrinkle that matters later, it was Overkill's own senior leadership that effectively ended up steering the combined company. They put a bigger, better-funded sequel into production with publisher 505 Games, brought in former Battlefield lead designer David Goldfarb to direct it, kept the same diesel engine and the same core idea, and set about building the game This is where it really happened. Payday 2 arrived on August 13, 2016, less than 2 years ahead. The heist to the next level. It launched with roughly 5 times as many heists as the first game, layered in proper RPG-style skill trees, and only let you choose between slipping in unseen or kicking the doors down. The franchise it kicked off would, by Starbreeze's own numbers, eventually pass 50 million copies and over $400 million in revenue. More immediately, it handed Starbreeze the first real profit of its existence after several years in the red. Payday 2 saved the company, and as we continue throughout this story, you'll start to notice a pattern here. Again, this one title is the whole sponsor Cogni. Payday 2 is a game about pulling off the perfect title. Was ignored and putting out before anyone can put a name on your face. In real life, though, you're the one who made this. Right now, you're ordering your multi-draft phone number, email, expose all the and that's the exact same come after. The details they find can lead to your Amazon, PayPal, Netflix, and other accounts being taken over, and it could also result in your social security number being stolen, and even people taking out loans or opening credit cards in your name. And it almost always starts with personal information that someone was able to dig up about you online. That is what Incogni does something about. It hunts down your personal information scattered across the web and gets it taken down, and then
und ein Gold. Goldelektrolyt an sich würde ich das kann ich so entchromen. Es schädigt keinen Lack, es beschädigt keinen Kundenmode, nimmt es raus, spült ab, kann man mit der gleichen. So, Fleck ewig benutzt wurde, dann kann das durchs Beschichten nicht glänzen. Das ist ein Irrglaube, ja. Das goldene Handwerk. Und alle anderen da draußen, die immer meinen, vielleicht die Jungen aufstreben, vergoldet war wie hier, regelmäßig, ja, das schon seit Jahren. Absolut zufrieden, funktioniert. Ja. Die Brille nachvergolden. Ja, hier in den Ecken. Klar, wenn ihr mit 2,7 Volt und ganz wichtig, dass man den Griff oder keine Fensterzierleisten von Fahrzeugen oder Embleme, ja, das macht irgendeine Fachfirma und die Galvanik kümmert sich entsprechend um die Beschichtung. Von dem her ist es so, dass aber das passt. Ja, also wichtig hier schöne gelbe Fläche. Auch vom Kunden die Rückmeldung, dass eine Abmahnung oder sowas passiert, aber man muss da immer aufpassen. Von dem her immer wichtig reinschreiben, ist eine 999er Feinvergoldung und dann wissen die Leute auch, dass es eine Beschichtung ist. Auch hier nochmal ganz kurz erwähnt, diese juristische Spitzfindigkeit mit Originalverpackung. Also ich kaufe mir jetzt was, ein Produkt, ein Handy oder irgendwas, nehme das raus und vergolde es und sage Original, Handy, Original, in der Originalverpackung, vergoldet. Dann kann der Hersteller hingehen und sagen, stopp, wäre abmahnfähig, weil ich habe nämlich ein Patent, Urheberrecht auf die Verpackung und aufs Produkt, aber ich habe kein vergoldetes Produkt, somit gibt es dafür keine Originalverpackung. Von dem her man reinschreiben, würde zum Vergolden aus der Originalverpackung genommen. Ja, dann wird es schon wieder verrückt sein. Wollen wir da mal belehren lassen, funktionieren lassen. Markenrechte an
Wenn ich da nur einen Haufen Gold drauf mache, weil ich davon ausgehe, dass dieser Schlüssel nie eingesetzt wird, er kann benutzt werden, da passiert gar nichts. Das ist Abplatzen und so bei der Vergoldungstechnik, weil da keine Spannungen da sind. Höchstens ein Abreiben, aber dadurch, dass das Werkzeug ja streng sitzt, gibt es da keinen großen Abrieb. Also man kann es benutzen. Und wenn natürlich hier einer ständig jetzt mit Säurefinger oder sonstigen Schmutzfingern ans Gold rangeht, wird es in der Regel auch nichts machen, es sei denn,
How little men know.
Yup. We get a convoy rushing through some ruins, and a Templar is telling his passengers, one of the newer ones that came out with Hellgate. Incoming video transmission. Oh, video message in air quotes, huh? You know, it's kind of distracting having big text flashing in the center of the screen while they want you to read another message at the same time. Okay, this guy's studied the demon world. Come find him. Yeah, let's... Stuttering on my movements. Like, you notice how it sort of jumps a little bit? I'm moving my mouse steadily the entire time. It seems to work fine in the actual menu. I have no idea what's happening, but it feels like I have sand in my mouse. I guess it's just as well I'm playing a summoner. My minions can do the aiming for me. Okay, I found the guy and the tutorial is still going.
Did you, mate?
Yeah, everybody loves reading two things at once, right? This is relentless. I really can't turn this off? It's been going for 4 or 5 minutes now. Okay, screw it. New character. Sammy the Summoner is dead. Long live Sammy the Summoner. Yeah, this time we're turning that off. Oh no. No, I turned that off! Are you serious? Wow, what a great start to the game. Maybe it'll eventually play itself out. Well, visually, I'd say we have a good first impression otherwise. I mean, normally modern ruins are pretty ugly, but the fog, lava pustules, and demons roaming around keep it interesting. Yeah, I like the statue there. The more little touches, the better. Okay, here's the end of the first zone. I've made it to the end of the level and the tutorial is still going. Maybe it'll stop in the next one. Wow, it's staying on top of the loading screen. Okay, Uncle, I'll open the skills window. Oh no. The tutorial is not appeased. I can't turn it off. Okay, this is a competitive field, but this might be the worst tutorial I've ever seen. Oh good, the location text overrode the tutorial text. And it faded. We did it, guys. We got through the tutorial. Well, I talked to Murmur here. He says a lot of nothing, and it's one line at a time, and I have to keep pressing the button. No voice acting for the actual dialogue. I realize that's the standard of World of Warcraft, but we can't have spoken text in a big EA published game like this? A single player one? Guess not. Okay, I talked to this guy. This is kind of distracting Whoa! Did you see that? His animation finished, but there was no transition. He instantly goes back to the start of the animation. As someone who's done a lot of animation work before, this is the last thing I want to see. It's just so jarring. Actually, Murmur was doing it too. I just didn't notice because I was so relieved the tutorial was over. Plus, this is driving me crazy a little bit because the game wants me to focus here. So let's have a guy taking up most of the damn screen, waving his arms around and twitching into place here. Not a good impression, guys. It doesn't help that the writing's feeling a bit... I'm not sure how to explain it. Let's just say it's not great. We'll see. We're given some quest, and it's very MMO-ish. Get 8 capacitors. Kill 10 zombies. Whatever.
I will adequately...
It's crazy to think it's been 20 years since I've games in general. I'm happy to confirm the campaigns of every game and the playable factions remain unchanged in Definitive Edition, so please check out the videos I did on the original versions if you can stomach some of my earliest jokes. This video is more about if Definitive Edition is worth the price of admission. If you don't own Dawn of War already and you like the sounds of whatever this guy was rambling about for the past hour, then the short answer is probably? $30 isn't a bad price for 4 games worth of campaigns with a lot of replayability, 9 distinct factions, and more than 100 skirmish maps, some of which weren't part of the original release. But an even better price is $15 for the Anniversary Edition on Steam, still containing all 4 games. And an even better price is less than that for the original copies. These are still a perfectly viable way to play by yourself in the present day, but make no mistake, you're not playing any online multiplayer with the corpse of GameSpy blocking the door, and pre-patch Soulstorm wasn't exactly stable. And what if you do already own Dawn of War on Steam? You've played it before, you like it, but there's always been some little changes you'd want to see to make it even better. That's what we're going to find out on tonight's show. Managing powerhouse of RTS the version. Just complete silence to let me imagine whatever I liked, I suppose. Facelift to keep the cool, goofy, and charming element they always had.
Man, their models look really good now.
They do. Okay, this is the thing, right? Because most of the models seem to have been updated to look really, really good. Why does the Scout still look fucking terrible?
Yeah, some of them look just ugly.
Plus, you can still make your armies as garish looking as you desire. This one I got just from clicking random. I don't know about the unit portraits though. Some level of upscaling seems to have been done on them, much like the Command & Conquer remaster, and while some of them look okay, there's others where I would have much preferred someone had just redrawn them. What's more drastic is the lighting and reflective textures on the environments. I was worried at first that the game was going to look too washed out, but I actually think it works in the right places. Dawn of War 1's colours suffer a bit here, but Winter Assault, Dark Crusade, and Soulstorm hold up well, considering there wasn't much colour for them to lose in the first place. Excluding Carava's flaming hot cheese flavour. This means that one of my favourite subtleties to Dawn of War's art direction, its coloured skyboxes, are still intact as well. Although in other cases the heavy fog of certain levels has dispersed, which I think makes the levels in Winter Assault look a lot worse. Man, why does every older game remaster remove the fog? It's almost never an improvement. This was likely in the pursuit of visual clarity, which is done leagues better by a much more zoomed out camera. Something every major mod overhaul has had by default for over a decade. The camera used to get a little too intimate with the battlefield, so thankfully each end of the map doesn't feel anywhere near as far apart anymore. And if that wasn't enough, Dawn of War finally has proper widescreen support now. Dark Crusade onwards technically had it, but that usually just meant stretching the entire display across your screen. And frankly, it's been far too long since I've seen these models in the correct aspect ratio. Just don't try setting it back to 4:3. This means that the battle HUD has been sliced up to stay in the corners of the screen, although it can be a little distracting when you show slightly Dark Crusades campaign I would have liked a few extra functions or curving this gap between the minimap and the unit panel, and I'm sure the shipment makers out there would have loved a hotkeys to turn the HUD on to fire. Speaking of, I really miss the bloody frame that sat around the player details in Dark Crusade and Soulstorm. These buttons just kind of sit awkwardly over the screenshots now, although I think the new images go alongside ones from as far back as Winter Assault in a great way.
Oh my god, Necron Lord, look out!
There's also plenty of points where the subtitles sit over the cutscene awkwardly. They could have used an outline or a black bar or something. There will be moments where something loads in that you would have never Regardless, it's a small trade-off for a version of the game that's easier to navigate than the game. And I think most visual changes are excellent quality of life experience at best, and only marginally distracting at worst. But Definitive Edition proves there's stuff you can do to the original Dawn of War games that isn't just buying them new clothes and giving physical plastic surgery. It's easy to forget the smaller issues with the game you play when you've been playing it on and off for the past 20 years. The traffic jams caused by units falling past one another like they're two British people in Syria. Now they face through one another like two British people in a non-Euclidean nightmare world. This doesn't mean the pathfinding is flawless, and you may think you just have to play that and think it would go anywhere, but in most cases it's a vast improvement over the pile-ups. Honestly, the convoys are full. Although I'd be lying if I said I didn't have any double points fighting units among one another now, and a few cutscenes get real funky with the models fighting at each other. This might be why Dawn of War the trailers are fucked up now.
Where the fuck are you, Gabriel? Where is everybody?
We've also got a few more menu options, expansions ever felt fully right for me, and it would have been nice to have WASD control without the whenever I use characters, I feel like I'm playing a video game.
But this whole video has been small price. One of the brands is being changed as the war for me to get angry about.
Are all the Space Marine Chimeras now pariah everything in the game? Do the Imperial Guard now have a silly name?
Borealis is involved. Definitive Edition seems to just be the final version of Soulstorm for its skirmish, while their campaigns retain their respective gameplay iterations for each expansion. Since that beta is so many battles, which chose a roster setting that lined up with the other expansions for skirmish, switching on Winter Assault with Hordes and Terminators, or even the launch version of Dark Crusade where the broadside battlesuits came in groups of 3. But the bigger changes? No, everything is the same as it ever was. Every unit, every mission, every voice line remains untouched, although it's worth noting that several unused lines for units and the cooldowns have been restored. Meaning the leaders and builders will say something with their own fire, and honestly, I'm just happy that adding the transport units doesn't really right. It will be my honor to hear it cry. Correct, my number 3. They fixed it! Let's go! Well done, it does also mean that you'll hear the death noise from battle lines of the Soulstorm races from across the map for some godforsaken reason, and there's a few cases where certain sound effects are way too loud. And oh yeah, since they've touched so little, this means Soulstorm is still I had a campaign mission crash on me upon completion. Guess I gotta play it again, like my own Boulder of Sisyphus. But don't worry, Boreal is bold in the actual gameplay. Oh, thank God. I also found that, despite a few issues close to the launch, the auto-match feature for online play worked fine for getting me into games with people far better at the game than me. With my sample pool of precisely 2 games, I've included the multiplayer tier list of something like this. The lobby browser still works the same though. But while I'm here, I will say it's always bothered me that player set teams hasn't been the default when nobody I know uses the other options willingly. The final major point to mention is the 64-bit support that Definitive Edition has. Beyond every visual overhaul and gameplay tweak, this is probably the biggest selling point for this version of the game, considering we don't know if the originals will be compatible with future operating systems. This will also presumably make modders' lives easier in the future, and some mods do currently work with this version of Definitive Edition, though others are still being worked on to get them updated. I think both our contestants will appreciate that. So who has gotten the most out of Definitive Edition? Well, considering the aesthetic changes are minimal compared to its gameplay and quality of life ones, tonight's contest has a pretty clear winner. It's me. That's right. Will allow us to produce weapons with which to this game for me! From what I can tell, Relic's priority with Definitive Edition wasn't to reimagine the game or modernize its gameplay and story beats, but rather to preserve a refined version of the game we remember. Sure, the screenshots you'll grab from the post-match freeze frame won't look great due to all the models clipping, but I can safely move my tanks and infantry together without them awkwardly trying not to run each other over. And yeah, I'd have loved to see this game launch with a rebalanced multiplayer so the Eldar get knocked down from their S stands for smug tier of skirmish dominance. But I'm just happy they didn't backport Soulstorm's version of the factions to the older campaigns, so I can at least enjoy my Ogre spam and Land Raider Quartet in the original versions. I've gone on record saying I didn't feel Dawn of War needed a remaster unless it was to make the lives of modders easier, because I love so much about these games, even their ugliest bits. I dreaded the idea of this game getting a bland boilerplate remake where its art style is gutted and every ounce of creative liberty was erased, in exchange for a homogenized Warhammer game to match the latest edition that looks just like everything else you can already buy. Contestant A probably would have loved this, but I honestly like Dawn of War as a game more than Warhammer as an IP, so I would have been devastated if all the design and unit choices that made me fall in love with the game were redone to conform to the modern canon. No, this game is from 2004. It is a time capsule of 4th edition, it has every little blemish, quirk, and canon-breaking mistake I remember, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Not to mention the best possible commander characters are chosen as their faction defaults, and that makes me so goddamn happy. It's like they read my mind for every little restoration I've wanted for years. But is this worth buying compared to the second-hand approach I mentioned earlier? While the future-proofing via 64-bit support is already a strong reason to get this to keep up with newer mods, and the multiplayer scene's probably going to migrate over for the same deal, the only way I can unanimously recommend this is if it stays supported in the future. Compare it to Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, which did a great job of preserving the game's art style and maintaining the game's meta with balance patches to make it feel all the more timeless. They did fuck up the chat lines though.
Wood, please.
Multiplayer balance hasn't exactly been perfect throughout the years, so bringing this game back into the fold is the perfect time to revisit these units and make a couple adjustments to even the playing field. But hey, given they already released a patch to fix some smaller issues while I was making this video, then maybe they'll actually do a balance overhaul someday. If the weird bug where the Ultramarines on the Titan mission becoming Blood Ravens is never fixed, then I can live with that. But the bug where some units won't complete jump orders properly and teleport back to where they started, that's a much bigger deal breaker. And if we get no more updates past the first month of release, paying double for a more broken game that has loads of tiny issues here and there isn't excusable. Oh, and you can still add custom badges and banners. That's important.
What's that? Meridian stands at the very heart of Subsector Aurelia.
You zoomed in and I was like, wait a minute, I don't recognize that flag. What the fuck is
Billions
that?
call it city's
With
home.
this said, the 30% discount for folks that already own the game is a great way of sweetening the deal. I already think $30 is a reasonable price for the entire Dawn of War package, so to get it for even less is brilliant. It didn't need to do that, Relic, but I appreciate it. Especially given how expensive newer games are these days. I'm paying a premium on this ape! I've seen many of my favourite games of yesteryear get remasters or remakes of some kind, and very few of them utterly supplant the original. And Dawn of War Definitive is barely, nearly there, but to cross over the threshold it needs to live up to its name. Definitive. I don't expect or even ask for new content for this game, to be honest, although we still only have one 3-player map, that's crazy to me. But to make this name stick, there should be more than just some reflective water textures and a zoomed out camera. There should be more than the collision being removed from allied units to assist the pathfinding tweaks. There should be more than relabeling the game manager to mods and future-proofing the game to make future mods more stable, but these make for a damn good start, forming the foundation to create the best possible version of Dawn of War 1. It's just missing a few more pieces to finish this holding grizzled Stern hunting him down, because these two have fought on a planetary level before and he might be the most qualified guy for the job. Hang on a minute, Gorguts looks different in this shot. What is this from?
Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about why almond water is so important in the backrooms. I've gotten some questions about this in the comments, so I decided to make a full video about it. And if anybody has any more questions about the backrooms, just leave a comment below and I will make a video about it. But with all that said, let's get right into the explanation. Also, I'm sick right now, so sorry for my voice. So if you've watched any of my videos about the backrooms, you've definitely heard me mention almond water. And if you're anything like I was when I first started learning about the backrooms, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what the heck is almond water? Like, what is that? Well, almond water is the main source of hydration as well as stability throughout all of the backrooms. It's found in tons of places scattered throughout the levels and comes in many different varieties. It can be found in clear bottles, metal bottles, wine bottles, cartons, and in some levels, it even flows through the pipes or into water fountains. Typically, all the bottles don't have any branding or logos on them, so it's up to you to identify if it's actually almond water. As far as taste goes, it tastes like a sweet vanilla rose water, or sometimes has a faint mint taste. Almond water can be traded with some entities and can also repel some entities. It can also be used to cure certain sicknesses or ailments that are common in the backrooms. Luckily, almond water is fairly easy to identify. It has a very distinct smell of vanilla and rose and tastes like a watery almond butter. There are tons of really dangerous liquids in the backrooms, so if you smell like vanilla and rose, just avoid them at all costs. Like I said earlier, on some levels, almond water runs through pipes and water fountains. This is the case on level 1008 and tons of other levels as well. For an unknown reason, almond water can actually treat ailments that are common in the backrooms. It stops the symptoms of disease, it's that disease you get from black mold in the backrooms, and can even stop someone from turning into a wretch. If you've watched my videos, you know you do not want to be a wretch, so that's clutch. It can also help a wanderer maintain their sanity and stay focused when facing entities like watchers or other harmful ones. Another use of almond water is taming entities. Now this doesn't work with all of the tameable creatures, but it does work with death moths and jerrys, as well as several more. I'm gonna make a video on all the tameable creatures, so I'm not gonna sample here. Some creatures hate almond water, which means that you can use that to your advantage by using it as a repellent. The best way to get almond water is to get some on level 4. It seems to be everywhere on this level, inside of coolers, vending machines, running through pipes and water fountains. But like I said earlier, almond water can be found everywhere. And a rule of thumb, if you want to find some almond water, if there's people around, then there's probably water there as well. Just go to where the people are. So to wrap everything up, almond water is pretty much a slightly sweet, rosy vanilla water that helps a traveler stay focused and hydrated throughout the time of the backrooms. It can be used to treat sicknesses and tame entities, as well as repelling entities. So with all those things going for it, I think it's pretty safe to say that almond water is one of, if not, the most important items in the backrooms. And yeah, that's just a bit of an explanation. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.
Hi, I'm Arthur, and in the history of 40K, there is a long-standing discussion that permeates pretty much every aspect of the fanbase. Hell, pretty much every fanbase that is mostly a masculine demographic is usually gonna have this situation where all comes to blows from the mention of this question, and it can exist from anything from Bleach all the way to something like Death Note, and sometimes you just gotta ask yourself, hey yo, who do you think would win in a fight, Base Goku or Tien if he had 10 years of training in the hyperbolic time chamber and also a shotgun? The question of who is stronger is one that permeates most fan bases, and I am here to give you a breakdown of everything you need to know about each of the factions, their strengths, their weaknesses, and why they are the way they are. This is literally just a ranking video, of which I'm going to be discussing each faction in 40K, or at least the major playable ones, and then break them down into sort of a top 13, top 12 type beat, from weakest to the strongest, at least in my opinion, giving my reasoning for each. Now, when I say weakest or strongest, I am literally just talking in terms of something simple, where if you take the faction and take its entire force and put it man for man against another faction, who would win, allowing them to use whatever they're best at to their advantage. Now, I should note that this is my opinion, but it is done with research and kind of in a good-spirited jest sort of way. You know, make some enemies, make some friends type of deal, you know? I'm not gonna mince words too much. You know the premise, though. Before I do get into it, I do want to make an honorable mention. I said it's kind of a 12-13 type list. There's a reason for that, because honorable mention for someone who is not on the list, but I have no idea where to put them, and that's the Ynnari, who in theory could be powerful if they even existed. I talked to my local Eldar expert to see if they were powerful at all, and his response was basically to say they got hoed so bad that they have never really been mentioned since, and that is very disconcerting. I think they are cool. The reason they are an honorable mention with no real ranking is they do have some neato tricks involving bringing the dead back to life, but that didn't stop them from getting shit-stomped by a single keeper of secrets, which sucks. And also, it doesn't stop them from losing most of their battles in like the half of an essay they got in terms of writing. But in general, there is a good base concept there, but we know literally nothing outside of seeing them get rocked, so yeah. You know the drill at this point. Subscribe if you like the content, like if you like the video, comment how much you hate me for putting Gene Stealer cults where I did, and let's fucking do this! Number 12, the Gene Stealer cults. Coming in at last place is the Gene Stealer cults, and I don't think I'd have to argue as to why. The Gene Stealer cults I thought about including in the Tyranid roster, but they are kind of their own thing, sort of, with their own different weapons and different mechanics separate from the Tyranids. So outside of sharing Gene Stealers and Broodlords, it's not exactly the same faction from a war perspective, but yeah. The Gene Stealer cults are last place as they are kind of easy to deal with in a 40k sense if you know about them. Like, the biggest weakness is being discovered before they are ready, and it takes them decades to be ready. It takes one dude doing his job and not getting the whoopsie stabbo from the Patriarch for an entire army to be sent in to exterminate them, and usually they can exterminate them and the planet survives afterwards. For even further context, there is a reason why in Space Hulk you only really need about 5 dudes in Terminator armor to deal with an entire Space Hulk full of Gene Stealers and Gene Stealer cults, because they really aren't that strong, and are literally only around to be the intergalactic equivalent of fast food for the Tyranids. Though, with that all being said, they are still a threat to most other factions, at least on the small scale, as because they are relatively weak, they have to play into their specialties, which is hit and run, guerrilla tactics type beat. They ambush and plan ahead so far that it's actually pretty difficult to stop a Gene Stealer uprising once it's been pulled off successfully, unless you include something like Space Marines or Sisters of Battle or something. And even then, it's still really difficult to stop. Like, a good example is what happened to the homeworld of the Scythes of the Emperor, where they were actually pretty much decimated by the Gene Stealer uprising that led to their home planet of Sotha being eventually destroyed, which was kind of an important planet, if you remember the Horus Heresy. But regardless, they are more of a tool than a faction, but they are still a decent threat. But when the main literary device used to push this faction as being dangerous is the fact that infestations were a game mechanic about 20 to 30 years ago, they're not exactly as much of a threat as you'd think on a case-by-case basis, right? Number 11, the Demons of Chaos. Okay, this one is going to be a bit weird, and I know I lost a lot of you by saying this, but follow me, as it's a ranking that I have to give an asterisk. I separate Demons of Chaos and Mortals of Chaos, as demons on their own tend to just do their own shit, the same with Chaos cultists. One empowers the other, but one exists because the other exists. It's kind of weird like that. So why the low rating? it's because without mortal followers, the demons of chaos are only a threat to anybody who's kind of close to the Eye of Terror, which I guess is now the Cicatrix Maledictum, so I guess they're a bit more of a threat going around the universe where the minor warp rifts are slowly opening up. But regardless, they also tend to rip each other apart and keep each other in check. Like Nurgle demons tend to fight Tzeentch demons, and Khorne demons tend to fight Slaanesh demons, so they kind of keep each other in balance because of the great game. They have to bicker and fight a lot because they hate their rivals more so than they hate anybody else. But that isn't just it. See, the asterisk is that when demons appear en masse, they are one of, if not the most dangerous threat in the universe, as they can kind of appear infinitely, and you can't really destroy them. Like, say if you have the possibility to summon infinite demons with no limitation on respawn rates, Chaos is the strongest faction in the universe, but fortunately, they can't. And because they can't, it means that they're bound to certain limitations that make them a pretty weak faction, as all you would need to know is the certain rituals to deal with them. There are several different specialized factions who are really good at dealing with them, and due to this high level of restriction they face, it's kind of kept them at bay and leaves them as kind of the C+ in terms of faction strength. Plus, both the Necron and the Tyranids have ways of dealing with them, with High Fleet Cronus being able to deal with them from a distance, and with the Shadow and the Warp being stronger with them, it tends to just make them despawn, I guess, if they get too close. And with the Necron, they just have the ability that if they could stop bickering like children for long enough, they could actually probably close the Cicatrix Maledictum, but it's never going to happen because they're too busy bickering about old man yaoi things to get anything done. Hell, the Imperium has both blanks and the Grey Knights, which are hyper-specialized units to deal with psychic phenomena and demon-based threats, which, for the blanks alone, like the Sisters of Silence, they're 70% immune to the majority of the tricks that demons have, and are used to deal with demons pretty exclusively. But yeah, in theory, due to all demons being mostly immortal, they could be the biggest threat in the universe, but think of them as a really cool sword, completely useless without someone actually able to use them properly. Number 10, the Tau Empire. Yeah, for those who know the lore well enough, putting the Tau here probably is not that shocking, as they are kind of held back being an intergalactic threat for like 2 or 3 reasons. For one, they don't really have warp travel, which means that they can't really expand outside of their spherical motions that they're doing right now, kind of engulfing these small spheres, which also means they just don't cover a lot of ground as a whole. That also ties into the second main issue, and that is that for an army with an actually rather large range of miniatures to choose from, the Tau are comparatively a goddamn small threat on a cosmic scale. There just aren't enough of them, which holds them back a lot. Even including the different Tau auxiliaries, they are still pretty small. The second major issue, but I guess you could say it's kind of a minor one, is that the Tau lack true psychers. Though the Empire itself has psychers with middling level of psychic abilities in terms of the auxiliaries, there are no true Tau with true psychic abilities that come up. And there are some problems that happen with that, like the naivety they have about the warp, chaos, demons, the corruption that comes from it, and so on, causes them to be put into some pretty harsh situations when it comes to relying on other species that can be corrupted. With all that being said, if those weaknesses were removed, Tau would probably be an easy top 3. Definitely not number 1, but the Tau, as they are, have some of the best tech in the universe, with a bunch of experimental battle suits with different weapons that are constantly being improved. Just look at the Supremacy armor and see the Supremacy armor railgun and just tell me that that's not a big threat. That being said, do they have the best tech in the universe? No, not by far, but in terms of weaponry and various other advancements, as well as the different auxiliaries they can call in on a war front, they actually can be a pretty decent fight to anybody who fights them in a straight up ground battle. Hell, there is lore that actually suggests at some point soon they might be losing their immunity to chaos, as Commander Fireside almost fell to Khorne, which would have been fucking cool, but whatever, man. Number 9, Craft World Eldar. Before you get your pitchforks and torches, hear me out, as I have much to say to justify my... Okay, for real, I'm just putting most Eldar lower on this because 25% of my reasoning is I just hate them, and the remaining 75% is that I think they are lame and kind of weak as a faction, but they do have their strengths. I think, unfortunately, in terms of universal strength, the regular Craftworld Eldar are the weakest of the main three. They are still pretty powerful, don't get it twisted. There's a reason why Space Marines do feel a little nervous around them. But, okay, so the main problem for an Eldar, especially a Craftworld Eldar, is a death of a Craftworld Eldar, or even a shattering of a Spirit Stone, is significantly worse than the death of a Space Marine or a human. Because reproduction for Eldar does take a long-ass time, and in order for them to reach a level of skill, well, once you kill 1,000-year-old Eldar, it's not like you create those all the time, right? So it does take time for them to catch up with that level of skill. It's why if you blow up a craft world, it's more akin to destroying an entire solar system worth of people and information rather than just... destroying a planet like you would think. I think the biggest one outside of that is their hubris, though. That's their biggest weakness. Eldar have a tendency to get a little too into their big speeches about how they're superior to you, which usually ends with them getting smashed by a 60 IQ guardsman with a single frag grenade and a really good idea. Shout out to that one time that Jane Zara, one of the greatest Eldar warriors, got tricked by a half-dead Night Lord into getting blown up because she wouldn't just finish him off. But as far as the fight goes, the Eldar are quite tough. In a straight-up melee brawl, if you were to scale everything down to their size, like say you took a Space Marine and you made them roughly the same dimensions as an Eldar would win every time. Their level of training and skill is almost unmatched. The only thing that could possibly beat them would probably be a Necron that was like fully sentient and had all of their memories, but other than that, there isn't anything that can match their level of learned skill, because Eldar spend most of their lives, if they're choosing the path of the warrior, to that, being a warrior, fighting, so that they are actually uncomfortably good at it. Unfortunately, we've got about 900 pounds of solid natural freight train wearing about 3 tons of solid steel and fantasy metals with a gun that seems to be a dedicated war crime weapon for each person. Yeah, I think the fact that they wear eggshell thin magic armor doesn't really do much to the fact that they're now a smear on the ground, but what do I know? They can dodge bullets, which is kind of crazy, but you know.
To battle then.
Number 8, the Drukari. But I gotta say this again, the same way that I gotta Master's gun. I gotta compare and contrast with the Craftworld Eldar as well. And outside of the few times you see inside, they don't really get to do many cool things or even present much of a threat. I'm not kidding. Think of what could be the biggest threat to the universe, and Drukari are weirdly enough low on the list. They're probably below orcs, if I'm being honest. And they're... I know people kind of gas them up a bit to be the biggest secret threat in the universe with all their horrible attacks. Like, if it was all big enough to have life like that on so it's pushed in by like a singular space marine. And yes, I mean a singular space marine. In the book, The Brothers of the Snake, a single recent inductee of the Iron Snake's chapter of Space Marines was sent to deal with an invasion of Dark Eldar who had crash landed on a planet. See, they were fleeing from a massive wall of orcs in order to seed a level of war because they were carrying an ancient orc relic. This single battle brother that was deployed there, albeit equipped with a land speeder, heavy bolter, regular bolt gun, power lance, power sword, and boarding shield, he was pretty decked up, was able to take on well over multiple dozens of Dark Eldar in a straight-up fight with quite a great deal of ease. These were Kabbalite warriors, I should mind you, but regardless, a single Space Marine being able to take on at least well over 30 Dark Eldar while on a Dark Eldar ship, and also having to protect a secretary lady who followed him into the ship, that does not bode well for how physically strong talking about. What about Ruthless Penor, the greatest Dark Eldar archon ever lived? The guy with maximum dimensions. But I'm like, well, yeah, they're not comparing individual Dark Eldar. Because that being said, I could look back at the greatest of demons. Oh, look at Starboard. Starboard is one of the greatest threats in human history. And if I look against pretty much any other entity in the setting, we win 9 times out of 10. So I'm talking about general principles of action. And yes, going to Kamara, they have significantly better technology than most other factions in the universe. But for some reason, and I'll get into why once the video gets towards its end, they never use it. They only use it when it'd be funny or when the plot demands it, but it can never be used, and that's because it would destabilize the setting for the most part. But I will say the home field advantage of Kamara is actually one of the bigger ones in the entire setting. Like, there is a side dimension in Kamara where shadow entities exist that we don't fully understand, and you can enter into contracts with them to have them just kill people. Literally just drag them off to the shadow dimension to never be seen again. And you don't even gotta play a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! With them. God, did I just make a fucking Shadow Realm reference in the year 2024? God, I'm getting old. Regardless, the level of technology that they have is also very interesting, but it's also based around not so much being lethal as it is being cool. See, they are normally equipped with splinter pistols and splinter rifles. Splinters being the term here to describe the crystalline, solidified, poison, acid, whatever shards that they load into these weapons. Think of it as a modified version of a shuriken. It's the same thing, but this poison is inflict as much pain as humanly possible and lock you up, either to kill you or to freeze you so that they can take you back to Kamara to torture you, because torture is kind of the thing that they do. I think that this leads to a great deal of boundless creativity, but it also can lead to a bunch of openings and weaknesses where, because they don't have the ability to just like shoot you and you die, it can lead them open to a lot of weaknesses. And with that being said, they still have all of the major benefits of the Craftworld Eldar, although not nearly as psychically strong, I think. Actually, now that I think about it, do Dark Eldar have I'm not getting into that right now. But regardless, I think that they're really a strong faction. I think they're gassed up too goddamn much, but I think that they're not nearly as strong as people think they are. Just read any book where they're the antagonist to see how hard they get fucked up against a wall by some random no-named space marine. Or they just win immediately because of some cheaty bullshit designed by Vect. But yeah, Vect is kind of a thing. I'll talk about him at some point, but who's that? Oh, hi, hello. This is just kind of a brief intermission. Just wanted to say hi, as well as, pay my bills. But before we get into that, I just want to say, enjoyed the video? I know it's kind of a contentious point in the 40k fan base to say one faction is stronger than another, but I should also note, I'm not saying that factions are better than other factions, as if so, Leagues of Votann would be #1. But regardless, I'm using my own biases here, and I just kind of want to know what you guys think. Do you guys have a particular ranking that you think? Take the 13 or so options that I have, make your own ranking in the comments. I kind of want to see what other people would think and what people would agree with. I think a lot of people are going to put Necron at #1, but we'll get there. So I just want to see what you guys think. But as I mentioned, I have bills to pay, so I've got something kind of funny to share with you today. My channel has been sponsored by GamerSupps for a little while now. But yeah, the Leagues of Votann are a pretty powerful faction. The only major issue, well, one amongst many, is we know goddamn nothing about them. As of this recording, there currently is no books with them as the central focus. But regardless of what we know about them, so we do know one thing, that is that they probably have the highest level of technology available in the universe outside of like the Dark Eldar and the Necron. Technology that surprisingly can eat suns, as well as ships that can consume lesser-tuned bioships for resources. Their biggest weakness is the fact that all of the technology is very practical, which might be hard to say, but all the technology is made to fulfill a purpose, and that purpose is to be any loss of resources be mitigated. So, what does that mean? Cartridgeless ammunition, short-range bursts that are meant to be able to deliver things in tight, confined spaces, as it's evoked, mines in confined space, better fire prism class, which are the OTOC numbers that fire more shots consistently than your standard bolt rifle. It leads to their military tactics to keep it and that's a bit of a have one. It can cause the economy traps that doesn't mean that the ways of master strategies, right? There's users, and smart chaos, and regular. Okay, that's it. But regardless, I think there is a really fun match. Okay, I'm and the fact that they legit have some of the best weapons in the series, but we literally don't know how effective they are in any war footing. There's only like maybe one war that we know about, which is the Battle of Orc Fire, where they ended up outsmarting 2 Chaos Warbands. One of the World Eaters and the other being the Purge of all things. They usually stick to the Galactic Core, which kind of makes the Galactic Core kind of a mini Kamara, as if you pick a fight with Kin in the core, you will be swarmed by a cavalcade of short-bearded men and women with axes and stuff. So, I love them. They have greater tech than Cannabis as it's all free the Dark Age of technology, but you know, this shit is a bit of Number 6, the Harlequins. Speaking of blazing, I'm gonna say this and try not to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but the Harlequins are probably the strongest Eldar sub-faction you can play, as they have a pretty high win rate in the lore, if I remember correctly. We are kind of at a point where there aren't really any negatives for each faction. There's just a bunch of different reasons for why they would lose in an all-out offense. Before I go into it, I think that the Harlequins are only just behind the next in line. Number 6 instead of 5 is they follow the camp of, yeah, sure, they're now, but there are so many consistencies and scaling that you just can't really Solitaire is more supposed to be on the construction power. Game, Solitaire has 3 wins, which is less than any space character. We wouldn't think. I think there are characters that are not characters that have that. Why? I think that there is a case to be made that they are the strongest of the characters. As one, have a living god inside. By the way, it's just the funniest little guy in the universe. The Harlequins have probably the best tactics in the setting, able to weave in and out of the webway with a level of ease that you can't normally see in anyone, while hitting shit with some of the most dangerous and fanciful weapons out there. See, the Harlequins have access to weapons that are kind of on the opposite end of practicality that the Drukhari have, where the Drukhari have weapons that are meant to cause pain in as efficient a way as possible. The Harlequins have weapons that are meant to kill you or inflict so bad that it can't be fixed at all. Like, case in point, the Harlequin's Kiss, a needle gauntlet thing that stabs you and injects feet upon feet of microphone razor wire all throughout your insides, consistency of range, which although doesn't have to punch dagger that shit in. You can't really treat that kind of you can't treat a guy's wounds once he's become toothpaste, right? So a lot of their weapons are really dangerous in a graceful way, and honestly, I kind of dig the aesthetic. And from an elevator, I can do something, but feel free to bitch with all the comments about how I got it wrong. The Pangorius blast launcher D cannon would rip holes or by the Though, if you were someone to say shit about the hero hater, then we're not gonna like who's next. Fine. This one is self-explanatory, but it's also not at the same time. So why are mortals of chaos so high and demons so low? One simple word: ingenuity. See, a corn demon, although a separate consciousness from the corn, still thinks identically to that of what corn would think like, with very little variation. But with humans and the cults that worship the gods, they have their own ideas that a god could not figure out, which might seem a little bit weird, but it's true. There's a reason why the chaos gods love turning mortals into demon princes instead of turning them into full-on demons by absorbing their souls. That is because if you give them a little bit of free will, they can enact upon plans that a normal chaos demon would not be able to. And with that in mind, the things that humans can do with this demon magic and the forces of chaos is limited quite literally only by the bounds of their own creativity, which for some legions of Space Marines should be a bit more limited. I'm reminded of a quote: hell is other people. With that in mind, a lot of people that worship chaos tend to take things from hell and put them into tanks, which is, yeah, that's not cool, and that's also incredibly dangerous in the battlefield because demon engines are a very dangerous weapon. And alongside that, chaos cults tend to be more insidious and easily investable than any gene stealer cult, as they don't really have to hide much other than maybe a single tattoo. But let's not even look at the humans for a second. Let's look at the Chaos Space Marines, shall we? They're probably the best threat to Space Marines of the Loyalist side on an individual basis than any other threat in the universe. Sure, Carnifex versus a Space Marine could easily rip it in half, but a Chaos Space Marine knows the exact weaknesses of a Space Marine and how to exploit them because they are one. It's shown that word bearers in lore are the worst chapter for other Space Marines to go against, as they usually play against the weaknesses of Marines pretty well. And what are the weaknesses of a Space Marine? Getting clogged up by bodies that don't care about how physically strong you are, as you are just slashing and cutting and they just don't stop coming, because they are not afraid of death. So they send a bunch of zealots after Space Marines, and while they're distracted trying to keep these guys from getting into their soft seals, a single word bearer with a force lance, a power sword, or what have you, just runs them through, and it's one of the most useful strategies that a word bearer has. I will say that the biggest limitation that Mortals of Chaos have is that they're not going to be as big as the Imperium. I mean, genuinely ask yourself, do you think that there are more people who defected to Chaos than there are not? So they're always going to be outnumbered by quite a lot. Their numbers are always kind of on that side of the underdog. Sure, they have some pretty dangerous powers at their side, but alongside that, their biggest strength is, weirdly enough, desperation. A man who has nothing else to lose and everything to gain is one of the most dangerous men in existence, which is pretty much every Chaos guy out there. Tech-wise, you have people working with the Dark Mechanicum, which is basically the Mechanicus' edgier brother with no restraints, who do stuff so dark that canonically the only video I have ever had been demonetized that I could not argue, even though I messaged YouTube directly, was a video discussing one thing that the Dark Mechanicum did, and if you know, you know. The Chaos Marines have demon corrupted tech as well that make it unstable and more liable to hurt them and the people that are around them, but also it shoots fire bullets now that fill you with evil demon fire, which is kind of cool. There's Terminator armor that fuses with their bodies, making them faster and quicker and more evil. The gifts from Chaos are just plentiful and in mass abundance. They may not be the most advanced in terms of tech, but they sure have the most explosively volatile and violent tech. And when it comes down to it, that's pretty much all you need in a straight-up war. Number 4. The Orcs. I know I just pissed off a few people, but orcs are probably one of the strongest forces in the universe if we discuss outright strength, but in terms of tactics, skill, and brain power, they are literally the bottom of the heap. The orcs are literally the Nepo baby of 40k, where all of their abilities to kill and murder shit is based around their genetics alone. It doesn't take much for an orc to be as strong, if not stronger, than a space marine, and also they grow in the millions, which is a problem if you couldn't figure that out. Orcs lack the tactics of every other race, as well as the brain power power, which kind of keeps them in check most of the time. Even though they have the brain power of a syphilitic gibbon, they still have some of the weirdly best tech in the setting, though not necessarily the most functional. Again, their genetic code leads them to have an instinctual level of understanding when it comes to technology. They literally don't know what they're doing, they just do. Something in their blood makes them weld pieces of tech together. It's why there is this kind of misunderstanding that if an orc believes something to be true, then it becomes true. That is unfortunately not how it is, as it's just actually orcs don't even know how their tech works, it's just that genetically they know how to put pieces of tech together and so on and so forth, which I think is fair. So, with all that out of the way, without mincing words, what is the biggest strength of the orcs? They are brute force made manifest into a species. I mean, they are physically the strongest race in the universe, able to overpower most anything through bulk or sheer numbers. And that's kind of what they rely on, as even though their tech is rudimentary in some areas and advanced in others, it's still useful. It's why as if you don't know someone who knows how to deal with orcs, this would happen. Regardless, orcs have probably some characters in the setting of Gasco Flocka, who is actually above Primarch here in terms of strength. Since we are on board, there is actually a precedent on most of these. The factions have almost wiped out the Imperium at some point, and the orcs are not the exception to this, as they themselves have come close on numerous times to killing incredibly significant characters. The orcs are held back by the fact that they are genuinely programmed to bicker with each other more than anyone else, as all they want is just a good fight. So, because of that, it's hard for them to ever band together in one massive grouping for any it never makes sense. But it doesn't mean they can't play. Massive laws stretched across the universe have happened before. So don't think that just because they are in the number 4 spot doesn't mean that they're not one of the strongest races in the entire setting. Because if you underestimate an orc, that's the quickest way to get murdered by an orc. Number 3. Okay, this one has been a good one. Top 3 could be arranged in any order. With that in mind, I have my reason for the teams being 3 as the biggest threat in the universe. And that is that 1. I honestly think that there is some massive fleet coming out from the outside of the UA. I know the Silent King came back after used to help with the were there, so they had any that close to each other and that much. I think people who think Pyramids are because they want the close to win. Now, does that mean they're a threat? No, that really goes to the second reason as to why that they're not the biggest threat on the universe or the biggest threat on the universe. And that is that people have found ways to hard counter Tyranids. See, the Tyranid's main specialty in terms of combat is the hard counter. No matter what you do, if you fight Tyranids for long enough, you will run out of tricks as they keep adapting to whatever you do if you do it long enough. But sometimes there are a lot of factions who have figured out that in order to kill a Tyranid, you need to cut off its head immediately. You can't give them time to adapt, and if you can master that kind of lightning strike, then you can repel it in vain. It happens. But one of the biggest threats in the universe for a reason. They have the biggest guns that have no tech involved whatsoever. They're just naturally farm-fed muscle. They get stronger with every plant they consume. They consume the bioheat. And alongside that, they steal the greatest weapons that other races have created biologically, with some species coming from just other species. What do I mean with that? Well, the solar throat, in theory, the entire space stock up and they get a good skeleton. But I do want to point out the fact that there is one last issue here, and the thing that kind of keeps them from being the fact that Tyranids, it is just hunger. If you are fighting Tyranids, you are fighting a swarm of locusts. You're fighting a tornado. You're fighting a force of nature that can only be endured and then sometimes fought back. Which kind of makes them a perfect example of the bronze metal. They don't have the ambition to push for more than what they actually want. They just keep doing what they keep doing, and they're pretty predictable in that way, which means that there is ways to kind of circumvent that. And there are some pretty goofy ways that people have dealt with Tyranid invasions. Shout out to when Uriel Ventress with a bunch of other Death Watch members broke into the interior of the head ship on a Tyranid fleet and shot a Norn queen with a pistol that was originally from a Hrud, and that pistol had a syringe filled with a super evogenic whatever goo that caused a psychic signal to be sent out from the Tyranid Norn queen to every other Tyranid that caused them to start over-mutating and over-evolving until they just died. Yeah, that was so goddamn stupid, but it works. And it's canon. There are ways to do yeah, let's go to my number 2 position, and start with number 2. Yeah, I know some of you are screaming at me because by implication you already know who the number 1 is, but let's discuss the Necron, okay? The Necron are one of those factions that are only held back by a few things, and one of the major ones is that they have all the world. And our rankings have semi effectively the best tech in the setting, very massive amounts of numbers, and also they just have some impossible to reach planets filled with tombs with trillions upon trillions of these things. They did get rid of most of their most powerful weapons though. They are still so powerful that in a straight up fight they can win pretty much most times. They're actually probably around they use old tech so archaic and weird that you legit probably have no idea how to use it when you picked it up, and a lot of it can only be used if it's hooked up to a Necron body. Another example is why they're so archaic because, well, their species tends to want the fact that they have multiple functions, so all of their emotions and tech that would hopefully kill it like once, their vehicles can stop and start and die because they have organs or blood that are shift. Stop and start them. Also, most of the vehicles and habitation things don't have oxygen and are mostly just pure void. I mean, they don't need to breathe, they don't need to worry about temperatures, and they don't really need to worry about anything else. So it makes boarding actions from other species significantly more difficult as well. So with all that in mind, they are a massive threat, which is why they're in the number 2 spot. With some of the most dangerous characters in the setting, people with the ability to slow time, freeze time, interfere with the space-time continuum, and let's not forget they have pieces of gods chained up to be used as both weapons and power sources for their stronger weapons, with bodies made of living metal that 9 times out of 10 can regenerate from pretty much any damage, and even further than that can regenerate even further and gain more abilities with the right command protocols. These individuals operate on sort of a pseudo-hive mind, being able to be controlled by the higher-ranking nobles with command protocols. And all of that being said, with all that in mind, why the fuck are they the number 2 spot instead of number 1? And that's because of one simple fact. Longevity. I know it might seem like I'm pulling that out of my ass and don't know what I'm talking about, but it is true. Sure, the Necrons have survived millions and millions of years and have kingdoms that would basically never die, but that is kind of changing in the most recent iteration of their lore. It's kind of their biggest weakness. Let's kind of break down what I mean. So more so than the Eldar, when they lose a single Necron, and I mean a Necron that cannot be regenerated, there is no way for them to replace it. Necron can't reproduce at all. They are not living things, and therefore have to construct new creatures to kind of serve alongside them. These are Necrons. They're not beings, constructs, are semi-sentient machines that need to be highly reliable. More or less and yeah, 9 times out of 10 when Necron is destroyed, they come back. But 1 time out of 10, they definitely Here's the reason why it's because every time a Necron fleet invades, they lose people that they cannot replace. Normally, it's immortals, and sometimes it's higher ranked guard members. And at first, one of my favorite things is a fire. No fire. They Death Guard is a virus that affects only metal, and it affects the Necron. Members of their species. No Fire Dynasty. I don't think we've gotten a recent update. They are being slowly erased because of the Ferric Blood. And even after that, player rights, which I mentioned earlier, which makes Necron slowly lose their sense of self and become a feral horde. They can't plan, have tactics, or be reasoned with, and simply wish to steal meat from living creatures. Hell, sometimes when they awaken Necron nobility, with their wealth of knowledge, they can sometimes be fried due to the eons of being frozen in stasis, leaving them little more than a gibbering husk similar to that of a Necron warrior. They don't have their minds, and thus all of that information is lost. Sure, they do have the best tech, but once it's been scrapped and they can't recover it, they're not getting it back, and it's very hard to find materials to make new stuff. Sure, Blackstone exists, but it's a finite resource, and losing a Necron board, well, that's impossible to replace. Sure, with all the interdynastic bickering and conflicts that occur leading to losses in their own ranks, even with someone like Imhotep or the Silent King kind of leading everybody together, there are losing numbers, and it may not seem like it's significant now, but there is no game. It might be people that have tech that wins them a lot of battles, but they will never be able to gain numbers back unless they reverse biotransference and make new Necron tier babies. But then they have a bunch of other issues, like they're mortal now. Sure, they can just wait out most of their problems, but waiting always has certain issues with it. They have a million planets and trillions, if not quadrillions, of Necron on each planet, but that's the thing. That is all they have. They will never get more. Even with Eldar, they can make more Eldar over time, and they can still gain skills, but with Necron, all they have now is all they will ever have, and it's not like the demon conundrum, where if you kill a demon, well, the demon just respawns and reforms further back in the warp and can come back later. No, if you kill a Necron, they are not coming back, and you will never get someone to replace them. If they did not have that, and they could create new Necron, they would be the strongest faction in the universe. They would not have that obsolescence issue where individual compartments become obsolete over time just because they lose their knowledge, their information. Nobles become obsolete as they just lose their mind to a virus of some sort. But that is why they are number 2. So, who is number 1? Hi, I'm Arthur. This is a compilation video of a 10-part miniseries I did for members only over the last, year-ish. It's about Imperial Guard, if you like that. I'm basically going to be cutting out a few elements and then making all of these videos public in this big compilation video, because I know you guys like to sleep to my voice sometimes, which is weird. But regardless, the series is covering a bunch of obscure and fun guardsmen regiments, and is more or less just gonna be all whole stuff you guys haven't seen, though cutting out the fat. If you want to see these videos before anyone else does, sometimes a year in advance, then become a channel member of an Arthur Lord. It helps out the channel, helps out my editor, helps me keep this whole well-oiled machine going, and then we get to have fun. So, yeah. Either way, I hope you like Guardsmen, because I won't waste your time any further. Though, before we get into it, 11th edition is here, and I think I have a sponsor that we all know and love, and they're also a good friend of the channel, Tabletop Stronghold. 11th edition is here, fellas, and you know what that means. If you collect Space Marines like me, you're gonna have to have some storage space set aside for more dudes, which I will accept happily, as I do want to play more of this awesome game. So special thanks to Tabletop Stronghold, as per the usual, and let's get into the Guardsman video proper. After going through a lot of the suggestions I had asked for in that one video, I realized that this is probably the best one that I want to do. I do kind of want to do one-off videos talking about obscure topics from time to time, but the one thing people talked about a lot was me covering their favorite guard regiments. So I took a few from the list and a few from friends, and here we are, talking about one of my favorites, the Maccabian Janissaries. They are quite literally one of the coolest guard factions in the setting, bar none. I would even go as far to say that they're basically just the cooler version of the Krieg. They are essentially the same thing, but with a lot more interesting shit going on for them, in my opinion, and basically they just have like a very similar aesthetic and way of going about war, but I just find they handle it better. So who are the Maccabian Janissaries, and why do I keep thinking that Janissaries in my script has two fucking hens? Basically, a long ass time ago, a man with a great talent for violence by the name of Drusus rallied a massive army in the Imperium to cut into the Halo Stars. Now, if you don't know much about the Halo Stars, they are something that does not like to be cut into, with innumerable Xenos horrors that would make even the most staunch of Chaos Forces feel a bit unnerved if ever they were to directly interact with it. Like, for context, the Ghoul Stars, one of the most eldritch horror parts of the 40k setting, are in the Halo Stars, albeit I should note that, like, a lot of the Halo Stars are actually habitable, at least marginally so, but I digress. I'm getting a bit off topic here. So, a man named Drusus was going to take the light of the Emperor to the Halo Stars and carve out a kingdom for humanity, fighting aliens, chaos, and damn near everything he could. The man was a legendary general, but was not immune to death, as due to the efforts of a particularly talented assassin of the enemy forces, Drusus was slain. But here's the fun part. Apparently, the light of the Emperor filled him and reduced the would-be assassin to a pile of religiously confused ash on the ground. This also led to Drusus being resurrected and even further invigorated to more for humanity, literally being filled with the light of his god and all that. His efforts would lead to the foundations of what would become the Calexis sector being birthed into reality, and that is an important sector of space, but a topic for another time. We must focus on the weirder section of the Calexis sector, because that is just a massive space to cut, whatever. The thing that we're going to be focusing on, of course, is Maccabius Quintus. Basically, the planet where the now venerated Saint Drusus was killed and then resurrected, now being considered a holy figure, and the planet itself being considered a very important part for pilgrimage for people that are in the Calexis sector. And the world of Maccabius Quintus also has a rank of soldier that has appeared in the last couple thousand years, the Maccabian Janissari, raised being essentially a religiously motivated zealot specializing in frontline tactics and working in groups, as well as trying their best, each and every one of them, to be essentially a one-man army. They're equipped with enough kit to make most guardsmen feel like they are a one-man army in general, you know, having enough rations to survive a couple days in the middle of goddamn nowhere. But the thing that resembles St. Drusus in battle. Don't never go home, runs all around the world, and actively attempts to die of death. St. Drusus, and to further the cause of the Emperor. It's basically the same thing as the Krieg, even obscuring their faces with the mask of the saint instead of a gas mask. But and they're not just fat-grown, try-hard clones who are constantly, I should note, putting the lives of other regiments in danger if they have to work with them. The Maccabian Janissaries, on the other hand, actually have a history of being credible leaders and boosting morale, being able to lead the front lines instead of executing people who complained about getting shot in the ankle at one point. Yeah, I'm still kind of on the Krieg hate train. This shit never stops, but whatever. The Maccabian Janissaries have taken part in so many different campaigns in order to stop some of the most horrendous acts of heresy in the setting of 40k. Good example, you guys ever hear of the Severin Dominate? Yeah, nah, me neither. A lot of people don't ever really talk about the stuff that happens in the Calexis sector because if I remember correctly, it's the main sector that the tabletop RPG takes place in, but yeah, it's an incredibly fleshed out setting. There's so many books to go through to understand it. Regardless, basically, essentially, there was rather unusual by the name of Severin cult. This man was he was able to scandalize assassinations, falsifying documents, and even going as far as to make deals with the fucking Dark Eldar, living on planets under his jurisdiction for torture slaves in order to gain their favor. Severin was planning something particularly wicked. He was planning on gathering the resources in order to secede from the Imperium. And he got so close. That's when something as they played these situations. And whoopsie, he got the resources to fight back against them, or at least the resources to spare. He called in the help thinking they were investigating as much, and well, what happens when you bring a bunch of suspicious situation, and started looking for those suspicious parts. So they ended up finding out pretty quickly about the Dark Eldar raids, and it basically forced Luke Severus to secede from significant areas and it ended up with him creating this autonomous secessionist So, needless to say, betraying the Emperor, betraying the Calexis Center, being a coward, also spitting the holy ground nearest to Maccabius Quintus. Yeah, the Janissaries took exception to that and were instrumental in taking down this
could be the
regretful
Eldar leading
crackpot.
operations in the sector.
I will save the full story of the Severin Dominate for another time, as this is kind of where the
records may hold
Maccabian
information on her.
Janissary story ends. You know what one of my most specialist regiments to love in the whole setting is? Clustered English, but whatever, but you get what I mean. Yeah, it's the penal legions. Yeah, they are an idea that is pretty common on the worlds of the Imperium, using hardened criminals to fight their wars, usually used as meat shields so that the real guardsmen behind them can get into better positions and not have to worry about taking a bullet every inch they take. Penal legion soldiers are often given a deal. Go on these likely to end your life level missions, and if you survive the campaign, you get an official Imperial pardon and can go back to a relatively normal life or just become a proper member of the Guard. Which, well, most don't end up surviving. That being said, we aren't just talking about the regular penal legions, we are talking about something a bit more interesting. We are talking about specifically the 13th Penal Legion, aka Colonel Schaefer's Last Chancers. These individuals are pretty legendary in the history of 40k, and their old models, chef's kiss. Absolutely super flavorful. Though, I also have to state, in general, I've been getting pretty hard into non-GW war and skirmish games, and the sculpts that they use oftentimes are just reminiscent of what old GW models were. I'm getting off track here. Me enjoying Argatoria aside, let's talk about the Last Chancers here. Colonel Schaefer is a bit of a mythical man, up there with Yarrick in terms of his ability to get shit done. He's apparently one of the most strict and gifted commanders of prisoners, specifically in the entire Imperium, which leads to him having a weirdly high success rate of campaigns. But unfortunately, because of the numbers he's putting in, he's often assigned to campaigns that are not exactly standard. He's usually forced to put his men on the task of accomplishing things that would seem borderline impossible for most Space Marine regiments, but what do I know? He tends to get shit done. Basically, almost all of his encounters are Armageddon war level shit, but what makes him so special to be given these tasks? Does he have any special selection methods that make him much more potent than others? Does he take the best of the best of the best? Sort of. Yeah. Basically, his recruitment method is to take the hundreds or even thousands of
chapter
the
records
most
do indeed
hated
make
and
mention
dangerous
of this
criminals in the
Eternal,
Imperium,
which
throw
the
them with
Eldar
a little bit of
Warlock
extra
mentioned.
training into a war
She is a
with a normal
Farseer,
penal legion
a witch
group,
leader
and
of her
after
people,
they go through
and
one
aligned
campaign
with the same craft
from
world which
the
opposed our
remaining
effort.
dozen or so that are left after the slaughter, he usually recruits them as special agents for the Last Chancers, who are then moved to a special penal regiment training colony to then undergo some of the strictest military training there is to be had in 40k. These individuals are the meanest of the mean and the hardest of the hard at this point. But to hammer home just how fucked up this whole situation is, they are then sent on missions that most Casterkin would be a little bit nervous to attend. Do they survive? Yeah, sometimes, which is kind of crazy to think about, which is also a testament to how top class Colonel Schaefer is as a commander, that he is able to command a ragtag group of literal criminals and turn them into a semi-elite fighting force to rival some of the Imperium's elite soldiers. Are they super soldiers? No. Are they able to take down a space marine in single combat? Probably not. I mean, they probably have to work in some pretty cheaty bullshit tactics for it to work, but no. The thing here is they still also have the usual penal legion laws, where if they succeed in their campaigns, they're granted their freedom, but there's also a single rule here. Has a good response to that. Will likely be able to help with that, especially if you offer him ice cream afterwards. But aside from you bribing an ogre with what is ostensibly 40k's equivalent to Cocoa Melon, which is that's a sentence that I didn't expect to exist up until now, but I don't think anybody else has said that, so yeah, I think that's weird. The 13th penal Fun fact, in the Horus Heresy, it's very often stated that the biggest weakness